To resume the meeting, bit of pressure on from councillors to expedite matters this afternoon, so we'll try and do that. Famous last words. So welcome to the table from the changed agenda order, the Waka Kotahi update, and again we are pleased to have Stephen Randier along, and today one of the key focus points is the Northwestern Busway project, initially regarded a bit of as a lost opportunity at one point, but now very much seen as a rediscovered opportunity, and it's certainly the one project, and talking to any number of people in the transport field, that garners the notion of a quick and a meaningful gain for a big slice of population out there in the northwest, which is growing at a phenomenal rate. So over to you, Steve, and lead you to give us the presentation.
Kia ora, Chair, and kia ora to all the councillors. It's always great to see all your faces, and thank you for the opportunity once again to talk to you. Just to expand on that a little bit, we're going to have a presentation for probably about 15 minutes. We'll talk and then open it up to questions. So we've got about half an hour. We're going to touch on the Northwestern bus improvements, but also we want to share with you all the great work that's happening in Auckland, or has happened in Auckland, around mode shift. There's some really exciting things that we should be celebrating in that space. So just to recap, the government policy statement is very clear around 4 strategic areas, which is around safety, better travel options, improving freight connections, and climate change. And what we want to focus on today is just one of these priorities, which is the better travel options. So this is all about providing people with better travel options and choices so they can get to places where they need to work, live and play. This is really important for Tamaki Makaurau, as we need to ensure that we have a transport network that's fit now, but also, future fit. And that's really important. So we'll just hand over to Randy, who will take us through the Northwestern bus improvements, which is a key project that's going to be delivering on this priority.
Thanks, Steve, and kia ora koutou. So just before I talk about the Northwestern Bus Improvements Project, there's some background which I know you're all well across and are aware of. Obviously, in the Northwest, we've got some significant growth that's occurring, and it's pretty poorly serviced by transport options, particularly public transport as well. And there's a significant amount of growth that's currently occurring, but also planned as well. And apart from the work that we're doing right now, the Northwest is also a big part of our future planning as well. So the Northwest Bus Improvements Project, it's actually a collaboration between Auckland Transport and ourselves. It was one of the, you might recall, shovel-ready projects where we had identified an opportunity to actually deliver a public transport solution to the Northwest, but in a much faster time than a significant project. So the idea here was to actually, in parallel to our long-term planning and thinking, to make progress for the Northwest in terms of public transport as well. So what the project's actually doing is looking at hard shoulder bus lanes on the motorway network between the city centre, effectively on Newton and Westgate, but also at the locations of Tiaratu and Lincoln Road, we're putting in interim bus stations together with Auckland Transport as well. The Westgate bus station is also a significant improvement that's occurring as well, and that work is currently under design by Auckland Transport, and hopefully in the space to begin construction in early 2024 for the Westgate bus station. As I mentioned earlier on, I often refer to this project as a bit of an exemplar for how we collaborate with Auckland Transport. It's really been fantastic for the two groups to actually work together, because we have a combination of the motorway network, but a significant amount of work is also happening on the local road network, but also the bus service and network design as part of it as well. So it's almost an end-to-end suite of improvements that we are doing. Whilst this project's actually going to help deliver good, frequent network and services to the northwest. It is not the ultimate solution. In parallel, we are kicking off work on long-term planning for the northwest in terms of a more rapid transit solution for the northwest as well. So there's two things that are happening in parallel. What's good about this project is that actually we are able to make progress quickly while the growth is occurring right now as well. So in parallel, what we are doing with AT over and above the infrastructure work is we're looking at the network solution as well. So how do we actually support the infrastructure building here through local services and moving more towards a bit of a, if you like, a hub and spoke model for bus services as well, which is going to really improve services for the northwest as well. In parallel or along with this project, there's also on the local roading network, AT are looking at how might this project be supported further with local improvements like additional bus stops, bus lanes, and bus services to support it as well. So it's a bit of an sort of an end-to-end look for the program. Quite a bit of work still to do in the space of coordinating our planning around the local road improvements and the services, but a lot of good work is actually happening in that space as well. And then I guess just my last slide on this is what will the interim works actually deliver? Ultimately where we're getting to is a high frequency service, not too dissimilar to the NX1. So we're looking at a Western Express service that's running every 10 minutes frequency between the city centre and Westgate, certainly improving those journey times, but also looking at a way to actually get more people using public transport, using the bus services in the area as well. Because as I mentioned earlier on, you just look at the northwest now, congestion is a real problem. Growth is making that worse, and the public transport offering for the northwest can absolutely be better. So this is actually part of the step-by-step approach to actually resolving some of those problems in the northwest as well. I'll just hand back to Steve to continue the rest of the slides.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. So before we focus on Auckland, just wanted to give you a bit of context from the mode shift focus nationally. So one thing is that we've had absolutely a step change in our focus through the National Land Transport Program, where we're seeing nearly $6 billion being invested in public transport, walking and cycling nationally. So that's a 40% increase compared to previous years. So that gives people a lot more choices on how they move around the network. And obviously one thing about that is that it frees up the network for freight, makes it more efficient for freight, but also for those people who really do have to use the network as well, if we can move people to another mode. Improving public transport is absolutely a priority, and we know that a reliable and frequent public transport network is absolutely critical to ensure we do get that mode shift and that vehicle kilometres travelled reduction targets. And there's some really positive initiatives that have come through the government SURF funding around decarbonising the PT fleet. There's obviously getting the driver workforce more sustainable through raising the wages and making PT more affordable. We do have a lot more work to do with KiwiRail and also in Auckland and Wellington, to get our patronage back to how they were pre-COVID levels. I think a real critical part around getting mode shift is investing in innovation. I think that's the only way we're really going to achieve a lot of this. So we've got some big initiatives happening nationally through hydrogen fuel cells, trials that are underway. We're looking at on-demand public transport, and it's been trialled, and we're doing that in Timaru at the moment, but we're looking to roll that out in South Auckland shortly. And there's also the national ticketing solution, which I know you'll be familiar with, and we're very excited about rolling that out nationally as well. There is a lot of information in these slides, but we'll get these circulated later. I'm just pulling out some of the key points for you. The rail is a sustainable mode for moving freight, and you would have heard Dave Gordon talk about that this morning, but most cost-effective over distance is normally greater than 200 kilometres. And our strategy is around getting about a 2% freight mode shift to rail. Well, the 2% might actually sound small, but when you look at the real numbers, it's a 22% network-wide growth in freight tonnes and also additional 20% on the contestable market. So it is certainly an area that we're focusing on nationally. The other aspect is coastal shipping. There was some money put in to increase the use of coastal shipping as an alternative to freight transport, and really it's enhancing the competitiveness of the domestic sector. There's certainly some challenges with this, but we're totally focused on that and working through those challenges. So just to focus on Auckland, as Randy said, we have a really strong relationship with Auckland Transport. We have to work together to make this a success and to deliver the outcomes that we're seeking in the government policy statement. Even though we're a partner in a lot of these projects at 51%, a lot of these projects are being delivered through Auckland Transport as well. So once again, there's a lot of information in these slides, which you're happy to look through and come back to me with any questions, but I'll just pull some of the key things through. So first of all, around some of our recent partnership with Auckland Transport, there's been a record of $2.8 billion investment in Auckland through the NLTF into PT services and infrastructure. So some of the real big success stories have certainly been around the Puanui station, which has seen that major bus and train interchange with those e-buses that are working really, really effectively. The Panmure to Pakuranga section of the Eastern Busway was opened up to speed those travel times, and we're seeing absolutely great results from that as well. And continuing out at the airport there, Wakatahi did the State Highway 20B early improvements, which provides that high bus occupancy and vehicle access through to the airport. And I think last time we were here, we were talking about the Northern Busway extension up to Albany. So other PT work that's happening around Auckland, we're investing, continue to work to get bus driver wages up to that $30 an hour around that recruitment and retention. We're also involved in the ferry reliability work as well, which will be good to get that moving quickly. You had the presentation this morning on the Eastern Busway from Pakuranga to Botany, and there's the whole planning for the future where we're working with Auckland Light Rail, where the geotechnical works have begun, but also I know a lot of you provided input into the Wairarapa Harbour Connections project, which is, thank you for that input, it was really valuable, but also focusing on the northwest, which Randy just talked about, and also airport to Botany rapid transit. Once again, in cycling, there's certainly been a lot of focus and investment in Auckland. A record $290 million has been invested in this 3-year period, 21 to 24. We've seen the completion of the Section 2 Glen Innes to Tamaki Drive shared path. And if you haven't been on that path already, I encourage you to do so. It is awesome, not only from a recreational perspective, but also commuters as well. It's really good. One of the big success stories for Auckland in the south was Ngāhau Mangere, which is a replacement of the Old Maringo Bridge. That's more than just an asset. That's actually, it's a community asset. It's more than just a walking and cycling path. So I know that is getting used a lot for people to go to and rest and to fish, plus to strengthen that connection there. We're also working on the Southern Corridor Improvements Project, Papakura through to Takanini, so a shared path down there as well. There's certainly a lot more to come in this space. We've got Transport Choices, which is funding 5 walking and cycling projects in Manurewa, Mangere, West Auckland and the city centre, and then completing the last link in that Glen Innes to Tamaki Drive shared path, which is Aoraki through to Tamaki Drive. Also delivering further down the Southern Motorway and State Highway 1, Papakura to Drury includes a shared path of walking and cycling as part of that work as well. So there's certainly a lot happening, which is really exciting. And the last slide I'll pass back to Randy. So this is around network optimisation, making better use of our existing assets.
Thanks, Steve. Look, we thought we'll actually just talk about this as well because you'd have seen from the previous slides there's lots of investment going in some significant pieces of infrastructure that we are building. But what's really fantastic about this program is we are partnering again with Auckland Transport to deliver on some really quick wins on the network. Where we're able to deliver fast and efficient changes on the network. It actually has a multimodal outcome, and the program's actually been delivering some fantastic results. And what it is basically us taking a 10-year view of how we can invest money wisely to actually make the best of what we have right now. And these are just some examples on our network, and Auckland Transport have got quite a significant program where they've got a combination of general traffic, bus, cycleway, so it's quite a multimodal quick win initiative that Auckland Transport are working on as well. On the motorway network, there are some real good opportunities where we either have or are investigating opportunities to just get some really good quick win outcomes as well. So just very quickly from a bus priority perspective, we have a hard shoulder running on the Onua Road bus, on State Highway 1 along Onua Road, and that's to support Northern Express buses getting to the Northern Busway heading north. We are investigating a hard shoulder running on Silverdale, and that's again to get buses out of the queues as they get into Silverdale in the afternoon peak as well. And so we also have, you would notice across our network, we've taken opportunities to either have a combination of high occupancy vehicle bypass lanes that bypass our ramp metering system to promote use of high occupancy vehicles. In some locations, like down in Highbrook, we're looking at freight lanes. So it depends on the land use. We're actually looking at some special vehicle lanes that actually supports some of those movements. On the Northern Motorway, we have a series of high occupancy vehicle and bus lanes to help those vehicles bypass the queue as well. So again, an example of how we're trying to get more off the network, but also encourage that mode shift as well. We've also got a few investigations that we are still looking into as well. As you can see, there's a few there from the Strand, looking at better freight connections and cycling connections between the port and along the Strand, and also further down south as well. We've also got a freight lane that we currently have on the link between State Highway 16 and State Highway 1, so coming from the port heading south. We're looking at how we can get more out of that by trying to actually extend that for freight movements as well. So quite a bit happening in that space. We're also looking at, there's a few gaps in the northwestern cycleway that actually connect with the local road network. So there's 2 locations that we're looking at together, Auckland Transport, to try and improve those connections on the northwestern cycleway. And of course, part of the work is actually looking at our ramp metering system end to end and what are the opportunities for us to operate that a bit better as well. So that work is still underway. So a suite of different things we're looking at in the space, but again, represents some pretty quick wins we can actually get on with on the network as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Randia, certainly a very impressive suite of projects and investment. One of the biggest ones will go to Councillor Henderson, who's certainly been very strong, if not the strongest advocate for the Northwestern Busway. Councillor Henderson.
You're very kind. Thanks, Chair. Thank you. Great presentation. Just 2 questions from me. Firstly, just in relation to the slide with the picture of the Te Aratu bus shelter, as you'd be aware, there's pretty heavy community backlash on the quality of the shelters. Just wondering if this was taken on board and how it's been adjusted. It's an AT question, but if there's any enlightenment you can give us, that'd be great.
Yeah, I can probably offer some enlightenment. Look, that was part of our joint working group. It was a real concern, especially following some of the feedback. And I'm aware AT have taken that on board and are looking at adjusting some of the designs of the bus shelters to provide better protection. What I will also say is that these are interim improvements, and so these the intent is to support the uptake of public transport. But in the longer term, we've got other solutions that are coming through as well. The other challenge we had is trying to balance the outcome in terms of bus shelter facilities, but also some of the space challenges we have on the interchange as well.
Yeah, strained. Thank you. My final question. Yeah, thanks for all your work on that. We look forward to the final busway/light rail being moved on as quickly as possible. But I'm wondering if we're looking at an interim step, because I understand that this is potentially a 1A situation, whereas 1B might be servicing Kumiu and Rosebank as well. So I think very, very key that we've got to do that. So would we be doing that in the interim way, or are we just waiting for the final one, which hopefully will get all of these communities all at once?
Look, Councillor, at this stage, that's part of our long-term thinking. Look, I'm happy to take that away and see what that looks like from an interim perspective, but it's definitely part of our long-term thinking at the moment.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Foley and then Councillor Simpson.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair, and thank you, team. That was really, really good, comprehensive. My question is just about the on-demand transport trials that you're going to have. It's on slide 11, I think, in South Auckland. Really interested to hear a little bit more about that. So where exactly in South Auckland are you thinking of having those trials, and when? And how would that actually work in practical terms? Kia ora.
So thank you for that question. So it's probably best that we maybe come offline and talk to you and give you some more detail around that. It's certainly something that's been operating well in Timaru, where it's similar to an on-demand, where similar to an Uber site style, where there's a request for a usage, a vehicle is assigned to that area. So happy to come and take it offline with you and work through what the lessons learned from that and how we're going to implement it in South Auckland.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Simpson, otherwise engaged.
Apologise. Thank you. Strand optimisation. Interested in that, State Highway 16. What feedback have you been receiving from key users of this important connection, and when will the final design be ready?
We've received really good feedback as part of the consultation process, and I think the feedback was probably in two different areas. One was around the walking and cycling connection across the railway bridge and the connection onto Quay Street. So we've definitely taken that on board and looking to see how we can widen the access across that bridge. There is no funding available to build a new dedicated bridge, but it's certainly something we're looking at to see if we can reallocate the road space a little bit to make sure we don't interfere with the freight, but we do provide a safer crossing for walking and cycling. The other bit of feedback was around the number of pedestrian crossings on the Strand, and Randy and I both met with Roger Gray, the CEO of Ports of Auckland, to understand that in more detail, and we're taking that away to see if we can optimise the design around limiting the impacts on freight.
Thank you. Just on the bridge, it's the same age as the Orake Bridge, and if you talk to Auckland Transport about what they're doing with a clip-on for that one, for the shared path, so the same option could be on that Strand Bridge.
Okay, Councillors Darby, Walker, Hills, and then Mayor Brown.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Randy. Thanks, Steve. Hey, just can you give us an update on the national ticketing? Where's that up to right now, and when is it expected to be implemented nationwide?
Thank you, Councillor. So national ticketing, there's a consortia of councils that have joined with Waka Kotahi, and there is a contract signed with the preferred supplier around that. The first area that is going to move over to the new system is in the Christchurch region. The reason for that is that their system has basically, the life has expired. So we're working through the timeframes with that now. It could be a good question for Auckland Transport. They're coming up behind us, I think, on this agenda item. So that might be a good opportunity to ask that question to them. But it's certainly later in the piece compared to the other needs for the rest of New Zealand.
Okay, look, we can follow that up later on, Steve. Steve, just in terms of a particular project I'm very aware of, that's the Lake Road Upgrade project. It's been on and off, and it's almost off again at the moment. But one of the inputs that your agency has provided of recent, I understand Waka Kotahi, although it appeared to sign the project off, has now questioned whether there are enough mode shift benefits in the project. Steve, I don't really want to dwell on just that project. I want to dwell on and get your confirmation that Waka Kotahi are asking that question and quizzing Auckland Transport and yourselves as the agency itself. Are you quizzing all the projects to to ensure that they are delivering or likely to deliver a dramatic increase in mode shift as you're expecting on just that project of Lake Road? I want to get a sense that this is a demand that you are making on all projects, and there's no political pick and mixes that get across the line without satisfying that criteria.
Thanks, Councillor Darby, and I might pick that one up. Look, absolutely, I can give you that assurance. It's a consistent approach that we are taking from our investment rules in terms of how we invest in projects, both our own and our partners as well. I guess in terms of Lake Road, it's been, in terms of the timing, it's come along at a point in time where these the GPS priorities have given us a clear signal, and our investment directions are giving us that equal guidance in terms of how does a project deliver on some of these outcomes. So that is something we're providing more guidance on. So we are consistent in terms of our advice to our partners, but it's being consistently applied to both our projects and the wider NLTP.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Walker.
Sure. I've just got a question around the, again, it goes to oversight on Waka Kotahi's part, and that's around the funding for the construction of various speed management areas, and in particular raised tables that are being implemented around the city. And my question is around whether Waka Kotahi do any form of cost benefit around those, because we're talking about substantial sums of money. For example, there's one going in Devonport that's about 3.3 million, 8 raised tables, significant disruption to an intersection that there's growing community concern around in terms of the congestion that may well result. So do you have an oversight role and do any cost benefit work?
Yes, we do. Look, it's both our network and the local road network where those opportunities for safety improvements actually do exist, Councillor. Through our Road to Zero program, we've developed a suite of what we call standard interventions, and that's just been tested from a benefit perspective. Do they deliver on those outcomes? But of course, what are the cost benefits as well? So those standard interventions were developed to actually make the process for getting safety outcomes a bit faster. So they do take into consideration the overall benefit cost as well. Individual projects I probably can't comment on, but that's the general approach.
Okay. Councillor Hills.
Thank you, Chair. And I guess my first question is just to reassure us again on Councillor Henderson's question. I'm just a bit worried that we're maybe not building those interchanges with the right, we say they're interim, but it could be 6 to 10 years, and that's a long time for interim. That's a whole school life for a child, or work life, or university, couple of years of university for someone. So I just want to understand, are we definitely looking at better shelters? I mean, we have better shelters on some local roads, and these are supposed to be bus stations with at least a seat and a bit of shelter, or some glass at the front. It just seems there should be room for that. Could you confirm that you're definitely going to change up those? People look at the northern busway, it's pretty phenomenal compared to what is being put northwest.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Hills. Look, I might take that offline with Auckland Transport and have a conversation and come back to you with more detail behind that. What I am aware of is there were one or two specific shelters where we're looking to retrofit some of those shelters to work through some of the protection issues. I'll need to come back to you on the detail behind all the other shelters.
Okay, thank you. But the parts that haven't been built, you are factoring in that you will have slightly different shelters that are on the current, so we don't keep having to retrofit as we go?
I'm not too close to that. I'll have to come back to you on that, Councillor Hills.
Okay, and the last question, thank you, Chair, is do you work with Auckland Transport, or at least try and feed back to them that these large projects only work if they also have connections to them, such as T3 lanes or T2 lanes and cycle and walking connections? Because on the northwestern side, there is almost zero, I think, transit lanes that lead to this. Is there a plan to integrate? And same with the amazing walking and cycling routes you're putting alongside the motorways and up the Northern Busway, but they don't connect to anything on the Auckland Transport network. Do you sort of work together to try and phase those in, or work out a priority list that then adds to the business case for the overall projects? Because if you can't get to them, kind of there's a lot of money spent without being able to get to them.
Yes, absolutely, Councillor, and that's a very logical question to put to us. And I think we talked about it the last time we were here. It's probably an area that we can certainly do better. We are definitely having those conversations as part of a learning, but also there's a real good opportunity through the joint work that we're doing on developing the 3 and the 10-year program for Auckland, where we are looking for those opportunities. Of course, that does come down to how we actually prioritize where those opportunities sit and how funding actually falls as well. But what you're talking about makes absolute sense, and it's something that we are definitely thinking about. There are some examples through the northern motorway. We've done some of it. Transit lanes connecting into the motorway interchanges. We could do better with some of the cycling facilities, and like you mentioned, opportunities in the northwest as well. Opportunities for the northwest, with the northern bus improvements going in, there'll be need to be looking at some of the arterial connections as well, which is part of the thinking as well.
Thank you. We just don't build motorways for cars with nothing to connect the cars to. So I think we need to do all modes that way. Thank you, Chair.
Mayor Brown?
Oh, thank you for the presentation. Pity Shane Henderson's gone here. I think the Minister would say that I'm the most noisy person about the North West connection, and he's seen me at it as well. Amongst the things here that we're doing with technology as an enabler, the Minister and I are talking about time charging. How far away is that from what if we're pretty close to agreeing we'd do it? I'll take the political hit, but it's on his road. If we say go, where would we get to? The point of that is every day between Green Lane and Penrose for 3 hours, 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon it jams, and same between Tiara 2 and Lincoln. And we were looking at, not as a way to raise money, but as a way to try and knock the peaks back. How possible is that with you guys? I mean, you've heard the Minister and I say we want to do it.
So thank you, Mayor. There has been a lot of work done, but that's been led through the Ministry of Transport, of which some of our team have been involved with. The most recent conversations we've been having is with Tauranga City Council, but the initial big piece of work around legislation change that requires a lot of that was done through Ministry of Transport, but certainly it is something that we see benefits in for the future.
Okay, well, it's sort of showing up in our new Auckland plan as something or other, but and so don't just regard it as something that's not going to happen. It's going to bloody well happen, and I'll make sure that happens. I think the other part of it is that I want to tell people that this is working pretty well between the various AT and WK on that, and here is the second most strong supporter of the North West has just come back. Okay, thanks.
Okay, Councillor Lee, could you finish off the questions, please?
Thank you. I'm just concerned when you have a presentation headed Accelerating Mode Shift, that it may engender complacency, because at this point in time, for various reasons, including COVID lockdowns and the reaction to that, mode shift is not accelerating, it's not even increasing. And so to talk about acceleration, aspired acceleration is one thing, but suggesting that it is accelerating may be misleading. What's your comment on that?
I think our view around that was the level of investment that's gone into mode shift, okay, which is enabling us to do a lot more across a wider part of the city than what would have been done otherwise.
You are spending more to achieve mode shift acceleration, except we're not there yet in terms of getting the public to buy in. So that's important because we have a problem here, and it shouldn't be swept over. It's something we need to confront and deal with. You mentioned quite rightly bus driver wages. Can you just tell us what the official attitude to bus driver wages is?
Sorry, can you rephrase that question, please, Councillor? So from the Waka Kotahi.
You mentioned as one of the problems that we all have to deal with, the problem of bus driver wages, or the lack of bus drivers, and wages have been identified. Not the only problem. Safety is another one. Working conditions, another perhaps. So what is the response? What is the Waka Kotahi response to that, to the bus driver wage problem?
So we recognise the challenges that we have in Tamaki Makaurau and other parts of New Zealand around recruiting and retaining bus drivers. So the government also recognised that, and through the some additional funding came through, which enabled us to work with the sector, including Auckland Transport, to do some wage increases to make it more rewarding to recruit and to retain those existing bus drivers. So it's certainly something that is very positive. We acknowledge it, just like we are around ferry reliability. Waikato is very supportive of the work that Auckland Transport's doing with the sector to make sure that we have staff on ferries that are well trained, that they retain in that sector, and there's a pipeline coming through for their recruitment.
I think everyone would support that approach. There is just a concern in that all our public transport services, just about all, I think, are privately owned and operated, and mainly from offshore corporates. And so do you not think there is a problem in New Zealand taxpayers and ratepayers subsidising these corporates who are actually, because of the contractual system that has been bought into, that we incentivising low wages in terms of the competitive contract system? Is Waka Kotahi looking at the whole system in total, rather, or is it just going in and using taxpayer money to subsidise, in effect, these corporates who are paying substandard wages, obviously?
Waka Kotahi worked with the government to deliver the additional funding that the government made available for this incentive to make sure that we had the resources available to provide a public transport system in a growing city. So it's certainly something you'd probably need to raise with the ministers.
Thank you. Just one more point. The Strand optimisation project, I hear there's been some problems in getting information from the agency about this. Can I have your assurance that you'll be working closely with the local community in this process, because people who live in the area have valuable ideas to input, and I think what I'm hearing is that information has been somewhat restricted, and I do trust that Waka Kotahi will be working closely with local residents.
Yes, definitely, we'll work closely. As I said, I've personally seen the numbers of the feedback that came in through the consultation. It's of significance, and the team's working through that at the moment to see how they can make any changes to the design that the community is looking for.
There's quite a lot of crossings for what is in effect a highway, isn't there, built into this project?
There was proposed to have 3 crossings, and we're looking at how we can optimise those.
Thank you.
Reduce them. Thank you.
Right, that brings to the end the questions, and I guess what the presentation from Stephen Randier shows us today is the quite impressive extent to which Waka Kotahi is involved right around the region, and hopefully, and certainly as a consequence of these sorts of updates, we're getting a bit more of a flavour of what's happening and the investment. So it's certainly not all doom and gloom. There's a lot of big projects that are just coming online or have been finished, and other ones that are in the middle. So it certainly gives us a better perspective of our Auckland network as a whole. Thank you for that. We just have a recommendation to receive the update. So moved by Councillor Baker, seconded by Councillor Fletcher.
Just a quick comment, please. Chair?
Yes, sure.
Look, it's just a follow-up there, and it's on the Mayor's enthusiasm for a form of road pricing, and I'm totally with the Mayor on that. I think it would be helpful if we came up to pace on that, and at a future committee, possibly. I'm aware that maybe a bill could be going before the Parliament. I'm not sure of the legislative timeline of the government at the moment, but it would be good to really get abreast of that. It's not just the Mayor that's enthusiastic. A number of councillors, I believe, I'm very enthusiastic for working that up. I think all the major parties are supportive of it. But of course, there's the parallel work that needs to be undertaken, which is implementing the supporting public transport and active transport network to ensure that people have choice. Look, Chair, I'm just sort of suggesting that we through Barry Potter, the executive supporting this committee, allow us to find out where this particular work stream is at. It's primarily with the Ministry of Transport and Government, so that we can plan ahead and be ready with a supporting public transport and active transport infrastructure. I'll leave it with you and Barry, Chair.
Yeah, I think Barry has a quick comment to make.
Thank you, Councillor. I was actually just having exactly the same conversation with the Mayor just a few minutes ago. I'll catch up with you offline later on, and we'll pull this together and bring it to a future committee meeting.
Okay, thank you, Barry. Councillor Hills, you want to make a brief comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And once again, thank you for these updates. They're really helpful and appreciate them. Just a brief comment on the Northwestern. It's really great to see, but once again, even though it's interim, we just need to ensure those facilities are attractive and people want to get there, and it's simply some seats and some glass would make a huge difference. I know they can't have the room or the space or the money right now to build the fantastic stations we have on the shore, but it must feel like they're getting a bit of a raw deal out there when they look how good our facilities are over this side. And once again, on Lake Road and Lincoln and Glenvar, things like this, these roading projects have been around for so long, and we keep supporting them and getting our communities behind them and giving them timelines. And I know COVID and other things have stretched them out, but once again, we're looking at, feeding back and getting local boards to submit strongly and lobby, and it just feels like we keep locking in these projects for them to be moved out again. So it'd be really great to see these crucial projects pulled forward or supported. And for years we've said to our community that Lake Road must include those separated cycle lanes and transit lanes and access to the ferries because of the climate and multimodal approach. And so to get some pushback that they don't have enough is a bit frustrating. So just I guess it's that integrated transport plan that the Mayor and the Minister are working on that may help with those things and help with the issues that I was speaking up before of the great infrastructure that gets put in sometimes by Waka Kotahi because they have a far greater budget not to connect to the local systems that we need to do straight away. And I think they would hum better if we did it all at once. So hopefully in the future that'll happen. Thank you.
Okay, moved by Councillor Baker, seconded by Deputy Chairperson Fletcher. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you very much, Steve Randier, once again. And